What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Hollywood Already Did It, your weekly movie podcast for things that have been rebooted, remade, adapted, sequelized, or are otherwise unoriginal and have been done before. As always, I am your host, Blake Schultz, and with me is Terrence Tatum.
Hello, everyone.
And a special guest from our Marvel Pair Up series, Jamie Jurok.
Hello, glad to be marveling with you again.
I have actively chosen to introduce you that way instead of with comicbook.com or any of the larger things you do.
I think that's how I would have introduced me.
And this week, I feel like I've said we're back 7 times on this podcast, but now we're back to Marvel movies in the theater with the enormous premiere of Black Widow, a film that we have been waiting for since phase 1 of these movies that Ike Perlmutter did not want to make. But we're here, we have it. The third time the MCU has gone back in time. Technically, first Avenger, we went back. Captain Marvel, we went back. Black Widow, we went back. But this one feels the most prequel-y of all of them. So rather than sit here and dissect comic books and how they adapted her as a character, which we have done many, many times, we are going to focus on the movie, the new characters, and making a prequel with stakes. Because if anybody who listens to this show knows, I hate prequels. I don't like them. I think they're pointless.
Same.
I don't understand why we ever do it. But this movie has changed my mind because it's fantastic. Jamie, what did you think about this movie? You saw it at an early premiere. You've seen it 2 or 3 times now.
Yes, I've seen it 3 times, and I love it more each time. Every time I watch it, it raises in my MCU ranking. And it's funny because I'm not a huge prequel fan either. And the thing about this is, like, it does lower the stakes in a lot of ways, but it also we've had such high stakes in the MCU lately. It's nice. It feels just like this fun little side quest. And now that I've seen it 3 times, it doesn't really matter that it's a prequel because I've seen every Marvel movie a million times. It just inserts in there perfectly. Like on a first viewing, maybe it's weird that it's a prequel, but now it's like it's seamless. It fits in. I love it. I love Florence Pugh. I love Rachel Weisz. I love David Harbour. I mean, I can't think of another Marvel movie where I loved all the new people as much as I think I do in this movie. I can't wait to see what happens with Florence Pugh. And my only real complaint is that I didn't love the villains, just because I'm used to a more fun villain. But the more I watch and the more I hear people kind of talk and dissect about the characters and just like the overall arc of like feminism and the way that these women are being treated, it's growing on me more and more, the direction they took. So I'm very pro this film.
I also really enjoy this movie. What's weird is I am in that same boat where I can't stand prequels. That's why the Solo story, I was like, I don't want this. I typically, it's because of the stakes. I was like, I know what's going to happen with these characters, or especially specifically one character in this. I don't really need to watch an entire film about that. And that did affect me a little bit with this, but granted, I've only seen it once. And sort of what Jamie said, I think because we do watch these movies over and over and over again, by the time the second or third time we're watching this, we all know what the heck's about to happen. So it becomes less and less important as you rewatch. So I think that because of that, my ranking of where it is will start going up as it goes along. Because I think this is a really well done. It's one of the best solo films for any character that has ever existed in MCU. Like, it's really high up there. I can't gush enough about Florence Pugh. I loved her before this. I love her 7,000 times more after this. Like, I am in love. She is fantastic in this movie, both action wise and comedy, and she nails it. She nails this character. But I enjoy all of it. I think I like the first 2/3 of this film way more than I do the third act. For me, the third act sort of does what Winter Soldier does too, where it gets so big, where you're kind of like, okay, guys, we did earn this, but let's scale this down a little bit. This is now ginormous, and I don't know where we're at within the scale of all of this, but I still, it had done enough legwork up to that point that I accepted it. I mean, you get simple stuff with just the David Harbour and Florence Pugh singing American Bye Bye to each other. I actually started tearing up. I was like, this is this shouldn't happen in the middle of an MCU film, but it did. Like just that family familial element made this stand out a little bit for me. I also think that this was very great to be in the hands of a female director, because there's a joke in here that if it were handled by men would have just been a shit show. But the Florence Pugh joke about women's reproductive organs is both hilarious and just heartbreaking at the same time, and sort of puts a man in his place about you did, like, you were responsible for this, but it works. But if Josh did this and he did a form of it, it's kind of like, oh, you are a gross man, sir. But this works here, and it plays off. I agree with Jamie. The villain stuff bothered me a little bit. Specific, not so much the main villain, Taskmaster. I won't get into the spoilers of it all, but Taskmaster and what we revealed that to be sort of changes from what the comic thing is, and I'm fine with it overall. The guy, I don't mind, because it felt very much like a Mission Impossible type of thing. And when you have that big bad who's behind a board type of thing, that's what this movie traditionally actually feels like, is the Marvel's Mission Impossible or Bond film. So I'm okay with the way that villain actually works out. With the movie as a whole, I love it, and I think as it goes along and I rewatch this a bunch of times, it's going to end up higher and higher on my list.
I love that you compare it to Mission Impossible, because my friends said the same thing and I thought the same thing. And I'm like, I'm such a big Mission Impossible fan. And I'm like, oh, there's a reason why like Winter Soldier is my favorite movie. And that this is kind of nice. I just really like a good spy thriller. That's just clearly my jam. It took me a long time to realize, like, oh, that's my taste.
I also just like the tangible action sequences. And Winter Soldier and this have that, where it's like that hand-to-hand combat just feels visceral. Yeah, it's just insane.
No, I agree with everything you guys are saying. From the 1995 opening of watching these kids and this family together, and then just we smash into some old Nirvana remixes, and we've got to watch one of the creepiest intros of a Marvel movie.
Is phenomenal.
Top tier opening, a top tier credit sequence, like that movie. It gets you in it, and the casting of the kids was so good.
Oh, it was
Mila Jovovich's daughter played young Natasha.
Oh, really? Is that who that? Oh,
yeah.
She was great.
Some of the most, you watch that opening sequence, and it just gave so much context to everything about Black Widow we didn't know. And it was just with this song paralleled with it. I usually hate these like slower remixes of old songs, but this one, we're out of 80s nostalgia. You had 30 years of it. I'm tired of it for these old people, and I am now almost one of them. I want my goddamn 90s nostalgia songs. Play me some Nirvana. Do it. Oh, I loved it so much. And then you're right. We're back in this like spy thriller, Winter Soldier, Mission Impossible, visceral action. It's Florence Pugh's world. We're just living in it. Every moment with her was incredible. Her asking Natasha, well, where have you been? But you're such a poser. What is this hair flip you do? What is that?
And what makes that work is because the joke is the hair flip part, but what makes that work is the button on it, because she's like, now you've been this false reality to all these girls on magazine covers. And I was like, oh Jesus, you hit her with a 2-piece combo, because you came back and made her feel away. And how can you just imagine how hard it is to be like, you see this woman as your sister, and the only way that you can actually see her is through a camera or through a magazine, because it's a superstar.
It's interesting because we leaned into something the MCU like tickles but doesn't really play with, which is the celebritism of these heroes. Like Thor Ragnarok has a fun moment where it's like, oh, photos with Thor, yay, right. Sorry about the breakup. And like Iron Man is Tony Stark. He's been doing it the whole time. And everybody else kind of just has this like legacy to them. But this was one of the first times where we've talked about the cultural impact that a person like Black Widow has on the next generation, both in the context of the MCU and as a result, the context of the real world. And like these people are looking up and idealizing her. And it really adds a lot of context to why I think these kind of movies are important to our reality, but suddenly you see them being like, it's also important here. You're getting into some themes that even like The Last Jedi plays with, of, well, we've inspired the next rebellion. These stories of Luke Skywalker are what's inspiring these kids playing with toys. And it's never going to end, because even in the context of this world, we have these stories. which is just my jam, is also just people being like, here's why stories and toys and culture impact are important. And I'm like, yes, but it's a great sister moment. We then have her driving down the road with this vest with pockets and this whole, we have our fun and games script moments a lot in this movie, and it's some of the best ones that the movie has. I can't really think of many other MCU moments that like nails the like, not just like the jokey fun, but like actual fun between the characters that builds their relationship. And
yeah, this feels more earned and honest in this. And it's quite funny, and I think it's because it's a family, and there's sort of a bit more earned intertwinedness that these folks have, but the comedy really works, and it works against the action. I think Winter Soldier does a little bit too, but not nearly as much as this does.
Yeah, and I just, my only complaint is I want more from everyone. I want Red Guardian, I want Taskmaster, I want Florence, I want Helena, I want all these characters to come back in a way, because
at least we know we're getting Florence Pugh. Like, that's so.
exciting. My excitement for that Hawkeye show went from like a tepid 7 to a high 10.
Like, I was excited for Haley, but like I did not, but like not enough that of all the Marvel shows. I'm like, yeah, whatever. But now I'm like, give me that.
I was really excited to see Kate Bishop on screen. But that'll be cool. But I don't really care about going back to see Clint. And then they were like this. I'm like, oh, sign me up. Put it into my veins now.
I think that's pretty much like that's Twitter. What I'm seeing all over Twitter too.
Yeah, it's funny how the Hawkeye shows had this weird legacy of, for a while we were all like, the Matt Fraction run of Hawkeye from 2012 is some of the best comic books of the time. I'm very excited to see this adapted. I want him in the apartment. I want him run down. I want Kate Bishop running the show, and I want to see this man on his last leg. And then everyone was like, Hawkeye kind of sucks, right? Like, I feel like that's now the Twitter conversation is like, he should have died in Endgame because, like, who cares? Which I don't agree with, because I like Hawkeye, but I get that we've done WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Marvel What If, Loki, Hawkeye?
Yeah.
Like, in the context of the rest of those shows, it's like, okay.
I also think, I mean, granted, we're going to end up with Kate Bishop, but to start this, we're going to start with Clint. I think it's also, all of those shows you mentioned were featuring or led by a minority, either a female or a person of color. To then just be like, cool, last straight white male remaining from that original straight white male.
We gotta, they're like bed bugs, Terrence. We gotta wipe them all off the board. We gotta get rid of Clint. We gotta get rid of Hulk. We gotta get rid of Thor.
And I also don't think it helps that personal life, Jeremy is not in the best light right now. So I think that also hurts sort of that. So they're
honestly, I'm not like, I'm fine with Hawkeye. Like, one of my favorite scenes in the MCU is in Ultron when he's talking to Wanda.
Yeah.
You know, I've got a bow and arrow. This is crazy.
What am I doing here?
Avenger. Like, I really love. I love their dynamic. But after when WandaVision came out, I read a lot of comics I'd never read before, and it made me realize, like, wow, Clint is like kind of an asshole in the comics in like a fun way. That like he's just so vanilla in the movies.
Yeah,
and it's fine, but it's like they just kept killing people instead of him, and it was just a weird choice every time. I honestly, if I had to choose, I would get rid of Hawkeye and bring back Renner's character in Mission Impossible, mainly because I'm convinced he's gay based on one line he says in football. I'm like convinced that Jeremy Renner's character is gay in those movies. So I'm like, bring him. I would rather see Brant come back than Clint personally.
Well, I think that's what's interesting about Hawkeye as a whole. Just, you think about this series, this whole MCU. I mean, his first introduction, he's basically a zombie that whole first movie. So we haven't really spent many times. He's kind of just always been there. Like, we need a guy to shoot an arrow. Cool, there's this guy.
Don't forget he was in Thor.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's in the bucket.
And that's where you get the closest like comic book assholery when he's like, you better make a call. I'm starting to like this guy.
Right. Yeah. That's the closest we get of them, and then we don't get any of that. He's basically sidelined in Avengers.
Even
and then
his
Ultron.
Ronin stuff is like 2 scenes.
It's so quick. Yeah. And I think my understanding is that we're going to get into that a little bit more in his series, which would be cool. I think that's the problem with Hawkeye, is that he's been so vanilla and so bland that we're kind of just like, I don't know him. So,
well, you know, we took Winter Soldier, who was a literal zombie and then is in the last 2 Avengers movies for like 5 frames. And I'm now like, what if we gave him an Emmy? What if him and Sam Wilson won awards for this show?
Yeah.
So they keep doing that. But back to Black Widow. I think one of the interesting parts of it is that we are now learning a lot about her character that informs Infinity War and Endgame in a big way. We sort of start this off with this idea that she doesn't have a family and everything's been fake, and they sort of reiterate that theme, being like, well, this family you thought you had in the Avengers, where are they? That they broke up, so that's not really that real either.
Right.
And it kind of, her resolution in this movie is realizing that she has two families and one of them needs her right now, which my small plot hole that I don't think is a plot hole, but I think it's a question, is like, she says she's going to go break them out of prison, but Cap does that at the end of Civil War. So does this entire movie take place when like Tony and Cap are winter soldiering?
I think so. I think it's really quick, and
So
I my guess is that the breakout of prison happens a little later, and she's with him. We just don't see her there.
Right. I was like, I think she gets Cap. If the way that I'm seeing is that she gets Cap first and takes Cap to that spot, and then Cap breaks them out together, and because they are all sort of on the run at the same time, and they don't seem like, when we see them together again, they don't seem like they've been apart from each other.
Because I almost was like, the mid-credit scene is going to be Sam showing up being like, hey, we gotta go.
Yeah,
like Cap got us.
Which is why I think we see it's Widow and Cap that are together when they come to save Wanda and Vision. So it makes sense when you do it that way. My brain, just because of the way it all works, is the whole, she's also rescuing Ant-Man. It seems like Ant-Man didn't think that she would remember him when he comes to the mansion to see all that. So that was where my brain went.
But he references Germany. He's like, I got big, you know me.
Right, but he doesn't reference like, you broke me out of prison.
Also,
they get plea bargains. Clint and Ant-Man make pleas.
That's true.
I think by the time they come, they must be out, because William Hurt says that. He says, like, I got the shrinking,
the incredible shrinking convict.
And the other, so and I'm trying to remember if in Civil War we see the two of them in the prison when they.
We do, because Clint does his whole like, the futurist is here, everyone.
No, I mean like at the very end when they.
It's just Cap shows up out of the shadow
Cap.
to get Sam.
So they may have already been given. They may have already been given their leniency because they both have families, so they might have worked something out with the two of them.
Yeah, we don't really know the time lapse between.
There's definitely got to be like a few weeks of planning or something, and there enough time for Clint and Scott to make their deals.
Yeah.
That was my one, like, okay, hold on. But it worked. I don't even care. I'm like, I don't give a shit.
I say it's fine. Yeah,
totally.
But I like that we've sort of put in that Widow has two families, and she's sort of like, I got to get this family work. It's a really cool thing, because I think the thing that works, that I had to kind of sort of think about is that Maddie was aware that she was on assignment when she was a kid. Yelena was not. Yelena was like too young to realize so all of this
would have been 3 when they started.
Right. So Yelena, this is all real to her. And so that's why when she has that, it's like, you were my mom and all that.
It was real to me.
But that Widow sequence in the open before, when they're kids, when they start to put their hands on Yelena, and Natasha was like, stay the fuck away from her. I will murder all of you. I was like, oh, this is real to her too. Like, it might be still, she knows this is assignment, but in some way she did connect to her. And that's why when she said it at the end, like, no, you are my sister. I was like,
it also shows that even at a young age, she rejected that system.
Right.
That is, like, soon as she could, she was helping people who didn't need to be in that.
Yeah.
Which I like, because the Red Guardian shows up and is like, I want the costume back. I'm bored. This sucks. And you're like, oh, he's a countryman.
Right.
I also need to know, I'm jumping around a little bit here, but I don't care. I need to know who he was fighting in the 80s. Because he keeps saying Captain America, and in prison, they're like, well, Cap's under ice. And he says, you're calling me a liar, which I'm like, sure, the man's a liar. But when he sees Black Widow, he's like, come here.
Did you talk about me?
I think he's just delusional. I really think that, I don't think that he thinks he fought Captain America, or like,
I think it's Bucky or Isaiah.
I say, or Isaiah.
That would be cool.
Or Isaiah.
But I didn't read it as, I read it as he's just like so delusional that he spent so much time like thinking about how he's Russia's Captain America that he assumes Captain America has been thinking the same thing
would be I'm his equal. He would talk about me.
Exactly.
Or know about me. Yeah.
I don't. That's how I interpreted it, but it would be cool if we could go back and see him fighting Isaiah.
Yeah.
I mean, a part of me was like, is it Bucky? Is there another Captain America we don't know about? Because in the comics, you know, they're kind of loophole for like 1980s issues of Captain America. Once they introduced him, was like, no, that's a different one. Steve was under ice, and this Cap you've been reading about is somebody else. So I'm like, there could be.
I think it gets real messy if you put because he was hidden so much. When you put the black Captain America Isaiah out there, I don't know. I don't think he would have been fighting him. I think it is like Jamie said. It's just
Isaiah's
a matter of
also
like,
whole thing is like they would never
they
give
wouldn't
me
have used
this.
me. Right. They would never use me for this. So they were just testing me and taking my blood. They didn't want me to be out in the field. So I think this is more of him like, hey, I'm the equal to that guy. He ever want to talk about me? Because, you know, I'm the same here over in.
It's like me would be thinking that Elizabeth Olsen somehow talks about me as much as I talk about her.
Because look, hear me out. If we can get like another season of Bucky and the Winter Soldier, Captain America and the Winter Soldier, or even in Cap 4, and there's some old 1980s Cap that is like worse than John Walker, and is like the reason John Walker has to become good, I'm in for it. If we can get some real shitty guy.
I also hope, because I think obviously if Natasha's gone, some of the characters outside of Yelena who we've already seen are going to be put on the board. I don't really want to lose David Harbour in this world, or even Rachel Weisz. I would imagine the place to put them back in is Captain America 4, because it fits with that world if we're going to keep using them.
There's a lot of places you could put them.
Or Secret Wars would probably fit there too.
I wouldn't be surprised if we never saw Rachel again, which would make me sad. But I think people love David Harbour so much, and he's enjoying it so much. I would be shocked if we never saw him again.
Yeah, but he's the type of person to call back consistently. Like, Kevin, you need me?
Exactly. I really thought Rachel was gonna die in this movie, and so the fact that she's alive makes me really happy. Just thinking like knowing she could come back.
We did a good job of keeping everybody on the table. I think my only real complaint with the movie, and I don't even care, it's a Marvel movie, is I was ahead of it. As soon as they were like, you thought you killed Dreykov and his daughter, I was like, that's Taskmaster. The daughter is Taskmaster. That's the daughter. Dreykov's alive and the daughter is that's it. That was my only like, come on guys, make it like a little bit more complex.
There were some cool things for me. I mean, obviously it seemed like it was probably written on the wall, but I like the Rachel Weisz flip when the plan was made. That's very Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
Like, here's what the plan was, is what we did. And the thing that really got me, that I was like, this is great, is the pheromone lock. I was like, sure, fuck it. That's
another thing that as soon as she started being like, punch me, I was like, she was trying to break her nose.
I did too. I was like, yeah, this is great. Which was good. We're seeing, I like this movie too, because you also see, as badass as Black Widow is, she's also one of the smartest people in the room. She's like, I'm trying to outsmart you.
You know, there's all these talks of when Marvel tries to make another genre, and when they do it, it turns into a big bombastic, not that this doesn't have big bombastic set pieces, but that scene, I loved it for two reasons. I liked that she just straight up was like, hey, your plan sucks. You have all of these like widows, but you're not doing anything with them. But he's like, well, I could control a whole country. And she's like, but you're not. And I was like, this is great. He basically has like a shitty Winter Soldier program where he's like, but I could just press a button. And they're like, who cares? Which is all just to get him to show her the database. Mm-hmm. We're back to like Avengers with her talking to Loki to thank you for your cooperation.
Exactly.
Stuff. The nose breaking, I was like, this is so Tom Cruise spy, Mission 100%. Impossible. Whenever I see people are like, oh, it's not really a spy movie. I'm like, that is more spy shit than I have seen in a movie since the Pelican Brief.
And it's very Mission Impossible in the fact that like she had a plan. It didn't work because he didn't punch her hard enough. And she was just like, fuck it. And just broke her own nose, which is nuts.
Love it. I love it. Yeah, that was all great. I liked, we talked a lot about Red Guardian. I want him back. I want more. I loved seeing him become a father, that he always did care, even though he was bored. I loved Taskmaster. My only complaint is more. And it's like, I said it to Jamie before we started recording. I really wanted like and I'm asking for too much. I wanted like a 4-minute long fight scene with her and Black Widow where she's just switching.
Correct.
Spider-Man, Black Panther, and I wanted Widow to call it out because you see it.
Because she has
see the Winter Soldier knife trick. We see Hawkeye and the bow and arrow. We see Wakanda forever.
Yeah, so I wanted that too, and just her kind of like having to switch on the fly. Like, I fought all these people. I have to alter what I'm doing because we saw
like a Spider-Man jump. Even when she's falling through the air, it's a little like Iron Man kind of like moving.
Yeah.
But I really was like
none of this, and I can't wait to watch it for a 4th time tomorrow. And
I definitely saw
she comes up with a bow and arrow.
Yeah, I definitely saw the Hawkeye, the Widow. I mean, the Black Panther, and I saw he definitely does a Spider-Man jump.
I noticed the Black Panther, but I didn't it didn't really click what was happening.
Because the fight she's watching in the beginning is Clint and T'Challa in Civil War. So I was like, well, that's what we're going to see the most of.
Right.
But I wanted like, because Taskmaster in the comics, for all the stuff they changed character-wise, I don't care. Change whatever you want character-wise.
But it's like Tony Masters doesn't mean enough for me to care a shit.
Yeah.
So.
He's got like, what I like about Taskmaster is that he does have an answer to everything.
Right.
So it's like he doesn't have a hammer, but he's got something that he can shoot with lightning. He doesn't have web shooters, but he's got like DIY ones. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have Wolverine claws, but he's like made a glove. And I kind of wanted more of like that. Like I sort of wanted her to have some like shitty repulsor blast or like a War Machine thing to pop up. Like I kept waiting for some like hammer tech solutions.
Oh, I would love Justin Hammer to come back in here.
Same.
Armor Wars.
Sam Rockwell.
Oh yeah.
But you know, between her, Yelena's arc of just everything being real and then not being real and then becoming real. So then the matter at hand, well, before we fully do that, no, let's do it. Adding stakes to a prequel. I think normally, I hate to use Star Wars, but I'm going to use Star Wars. We go all the way back to episode 1, and that movie was like, here's some new characters, quite, we maybe didn't know that he was going to get spired by Darth Maul, but we knew Qui-Gon was going to die one day.
Yeah.
We knew all these Jedi were going to die one day.
I think it becomes, in those instances, it becomes a matter of how well did you make this, how important is this character, how well do I relate to this character for me to, they're going to die, but now I'm invested in how they get to that point. Some do that better than the other. I like Rogue One because it does that better than the others, but then you have movies, which is a prequel, like a new, the Solo story, where like all these characters are one-to-ones of people that actually exist. There are no stakes in that. So that's where, in this one, Widow sort of acts as a hybrid because we know Maddie's fate, but we don't know the main other three, which is sort of the sweet spot of this movie.
And I think we start seeing the building out of the MCU in ways that we haven't really yet. And some of that is the post-credit scene of Valentina and Yelena, and spoiler alert, don't you want a shot at the guy who killed your sister? And we go, oh, this is going to be awesome because we know that Clint and Nat were best friends. And we know that on the Red Skull planet, Vormir, they had to make a choice. No one else
is aware of that. No.
But it is also interesting to me where I'm like, Vormir is now just a thing people are aware of. Like everyone knows that Clint and Nat went somewhere,
and one of them did not return. Yeah,
it's like the same way. It's that Far From Home quote where it's like, yeah, we used to think Thor was fake. Now we study him in physics class, and I was like, yeah, it's funny that that Valentina brings it up because it's either at least knowledge that spy people have, or that like high schoolers are learning about the Red Skull showing up in Vormir and like knowing your parents' names. So it really begs that question of like, well, what's that going to be like for that character? How is she now going to hunt down Clint? Is she going to kill him and then learn that she made a mistake? Is she going to get close and then Kate Bishop has to like take over?
It's very possible because I mean, obviously, this is we're moving mantles. This is going to Kate, so she could easily walk in there and like, I'm going to take this dude out, and before getting any type of questions or answers, and then find out that they were like best friends.
My dream is that there's this big fight between Kate and Elena, and then but finally they realize that they're on the same side, and then they become girlfriends.
Well, listen, I mean, with Valentina, we're definitely setting up Dark Avengers in this in some form or fashion. Or the Thunderbolts, because Ross keeps popping up. I think it's going
to be more Thunderbolts because both Yelena and John Walker sucks.
Yeah.
But he's not evil.
No.
Like when Norman Osborn makes the Dark Avengers in the comics.
They are like...
The Green Goblin is evil.
He's a murder, yeah.
And he gets Scorpion, Bullseye, some of the worst villains to do this. And I'm like, well... These are all just misguided people that she has. So this could all turn on her.
I don't see Florence Pugh
staying. She's too important of a, like my wife mentioned. She's like, I don't want her to be on the bad folks. I want her to be with. I was like, yeah, I think
no.
this is
We
hit
want
too
her to be
well
on the
that she's
bad
going to
folks for
switch.
a while. We want some good villains. This is a good villain. This is interesting.
I do think that because we keep using William Hurt and because that man cannot stop, his heart is just going to fail.
Well,
we're going to get Red Hulk pretty quick because I think he's going to end up with that serum. Like, I got to get out. I'm falling apart.
If we're going to do that, we got to do that, I think, sooner than later because William Hurt, I thought they de-aged him in this movie.
Which is weird because time-wise, someone else mentioned this because I saw this on the timeline.
And
he just
small
looks young.
And
yeah,
sick.
I don't know if he's. I don't know if he's personally ill or if this was a choice. But time-wise, there was no reason to do it because.
No, I think he's just getting old. Yeah. That's just what it's like. If I get old and I get stronger cheekbones, great.
Well done. One, I guess he's getting up there.
Yeah.
So it's like if we're gonna make him the Hulk, we got to make him the Hulk.
And then which is fine because Red Hulk doesn't switch back, so you just need to get him there and you're like, cool, you're Red Hulk from this point on. We don't really need to worry about that.
Yeah.
What I found fascinating about this, and because this is just the world we're in now, is that this is the first time that a post-credit sequence is going to lead to a television show.
Well, Terrence, it's also the first time in years that a post-credit scene hasn't just been a bit.
That's true.
Yeah, usually that's more of a mid-credits.
Right. Yeah, but to end up on a television show, or even in this weird nebulous where TV connects to film, we're in it now. Like, and Disney's and Marvel's kind of like, you're on it. If you don't, F you. This is what we're doing.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that's, one way they do it is there's just going to be more to this story overall. And the other way they add stakes, as Jamie kind of hinted on, is with Taskmaster. This is a character that has an arc non-traditional to Marvel where we just blow up Yellow Jacket and instead give her this beginning of her redemption and this very powerful message and her going off with the widows. And so I feel like where most prequels are just sort of like, you were curious how Wolverine got his claws. Here is the story of how Wolverine got his claws. This is a prequel that's like, hey, we're going to add a little context for Black Widow. We're going to kind of like make good with the fans because we should have done this in like 2014. And we're going to build out a lot of people that you want to know about. And I think that's what most franchises should start doing if they go back in time. We should be going back. The Godfather Part 2 is actually a very good example of like that squeezed a prequel in that built a ton of context and then led us to The Godfather Part 3. Yeah. There's ways to do this, but I feel like normally they're just like, people want to know this one answer. And we're going to do that.
They're getting a lot better at leaving dangling participle threads. They did it with Loki taking the box and they knew where they were going, but they sort of knew that and made that thread. Here, we could do an entire story of just like Rachel Weisz and Red Guardian going to stop or shut down all the rest of the widows that are still on the board. Like, hey, we need to. Yeah.
The other interesting part is we spent so long building space and we're back to building Earth. Like now I am like, well, who is Red Guardian full of shit? Is he delusional? Or was there somebody with a shield in 1983? And like, what are all of these other stories with the widows? And like, we're now in this, like, it's not quite shield and it's not quite Hydra and it's somewhere in between, but like we could do that for forever. And it's interesting when you kind of start being like, oh, this movie has a lot of stakes because like, I know Nat's story, but we're really using this to build out a part of the world that we've never built out before that will have long-term effects to the story at large.
And quite frankly, I think you and I have had this combo, I am always more interested in that because as much as the space stuff is fun, it sometimes gets so big when I was like, I can no longer wrap my head around this. Give me a good spy thriller or like, I enjoy that more because it feels more tangible and lived in.
I want to go back to the streets.
Yeah.
Jamie, how about you? Did you feel that this added stakes in a way, or were you sort of like, this is a great movie and I don't care that I know where it's going? Because that's also an answer. I don't know.
No, I think that the stakes were great because it wasn't about like, is Natasha going to live or die or survive this? It was more about her as a character coming to terms with all of her mistakes. Like I really like my friend said to me yesterday, he's like, I wish they had gone deeper into her real mother. And I go, I thought that was perfect because she learned more about her mother in that conversation with Rachel Weisz than she's ever known before. That was more closure than she ever thought she was gonna get. And I really just think it was a great character build up. And that's why I keep calling it like a side quest. Because it really it's not really about the end game of this movie. It's totally about the journey and the relationships. And I think that if you're going to make a prequel, that's what it should be. And we did get some fun, like we now know what they were doing in Budapest, however we want to say it, and stuff like that. I thought it was like the perfect balance. And like I said before, like it's not going to feel really like a prequel anymore when we keep watching it. And even Solo, which is much weaker, but I love Star Wars so much that I constantly watch that movie because it's Star Wars, and it has grown on me for that reason, because it's like it doesn't really matter. It's still probably my least favorite Star Wars movie, but I still enjoy watching it because it's just more of the thing I like, and that's what this is, but an elevated version of that.
It's also interesting that, this is my like cynicism talking, but when people are like, "Oh, there's no stakes," I know it's gonna happen to Natasha, and I'm like, "You're telling me you watched Iron Man 1 for the first time, and you're like, they might kill Tony Stark in this film."
Sitting through the Dark Knight, like, I don't know if Batman's gonna make it through this.
All the other, like, if they hadn't already announced that Florence Pugh was going to be in Hawkeye, it was very much would have felt like the best thing, because we knew Scarlett Johansson was going to get that vest. That could, and if we hadn't known already that she was coming, like, she could have died. I definitely, like, Rachel could have died. Like, I don't know. There are plenty of characters that.
Yeah, I think they do more damage, and this isn't necessarily on them. This is more on some of the media. I think they do more damage in like leaks or telling who's going to be in future casts than they do in the films. Like I can watch a movie and the stakes are like, but if you tell me like Florence Pugh is on set and is going to be on Hawkeye for the next 3 episodes, like, well shit, I didn't need to know that before I watched this film.
Totally.
Or you mean like announcing Far From Home at all? Oh no, Peter's gone. Wait. Sony's got to eat. Hold on. But yeah, it's interesting because I feel like stakes in a movie, in any story, are never. I used to say it about the MCU and Game of Thrones, where I'm like, dying is not the only interesting choice. And I feel like when people talk about stakes, they're like, but will they die? And I'm like, stakes are not live or die. It's the easiest way to do it. Will they live or die? But Civil War, when Rhodey gets paralyzed, and they're like, oh, the stakes don't feel high. And I'm like, they don't feel high to you. He's paralyzed forever. Yeah. And yes, he lives in MCU sci-fi world, and he's going to get robot legs and it'd be fine. But like, we have to watch him try to walk in that movie. That's almost harder to watch than some of the like funeral scenes they've had. Odin sprinkles away to dust, and we did bits about it. Like, we know Thor is going to survive Ragnarok, but they blow up his planet. And I'm like, good stakes have always been less about whether they live or die and more about how it affects the character in that moment. When they talk about raising the stakes in a script, it's not like, no, like stab them in the neck. It's like, do something that's going to alter the path they're on, or the life choices they've made, or challenge their philosophies. The stakes in Winter Soldier are not whether or not Captain America will live or die. This is a red, white, and blue Boy Scout, and he has learned that everything he believes in is fake.
Yeah. I have to play in this gray world to sort of do things. Yeah. And I think that's what the stakes is for this. Natty walked away from her family, or was leaving her family, and thought she was like, I'm just going to be on my own. I'm just going to do my own thing. And then she realized, like, oh shit, I need family because they need me. And this is what I need to do. That was the stakes for this film, more so than whether she lived or died, is whether she cared about her family.
It gives her agency for everything she does in Endgame. Like when she's leading the Avengers at the start of that movie, you're just like, that's great. Mm-hmm. I would have also loved to have seen that cut storyline of her like saving all the orphans. Yeah, and like helping the displaced children.
You're right. It definitely makes that scene when Steve comes in and she's like, don't give me any good news. Like when she's just running everything, it makes that so much heavier because you're like, oh, she's just got. Well, even I got to keep this going. Like this is the only family I've ever had. I have to keep this going. Do this,
right? Yeah, like it really all of a sudden becomes like, oh, she spent her whole life without a family. got both of them, only for them all to break up. She probably doesn't even know if Yelena or Red Guardian or her mom survived the dusting.
That's my question.
That's
like,
another.
I feel like Florence Pugh had to have dusted because one, just age wise, I don't think she's quite ready to play 34. But 32. But
for her to go after Hawkeye,
she would be
Like
active.
she needs to be
she would be
dusted.
active if
I think she would have been
she
around.
didn't dust it. Right. Correct.
That's just my guess. I wish that Marvel would just release like a chart, just like give us a book and every.
Oh, they will one day.
Yes.
We'll get that.
It's going to be in Secret Invasion, because I bet the twist in Secret Invasion is one of these scrolls. Whoever's going to be walking around, and someone's going to be like, "What do you mean you were dusted?" And that's how it's going to like happen. Like they're going to say something. I'll be like, I remember 5 years ago when we were on that mission, and they'll be like, no, because Thanos snapped and you gone.
Weren't there.
And
right.
that's going to be the like, uh-oh.
Got me.
I mean, it's great. I have nothing else to say. I'm so excited to see all these characters continue. It is a movie that I'm hearing some complaints and I just don't get it. Yeah, I just, because all the ones even I have, I'm like, man, I wish they had done more with Taskmaster. And then I'm like, but I don't care. They did a lot.
Yeah, I say it's more wants than actual what's wrong with the film.
I just want a 5-hour cut of this movie.
Right.
Yeah. Emotions. And I want to say, because I think you brought up in the beginning of this podcast the American Pie thing, and I'm about the same age as Elena, and American Pie was my favorite song as a kid. Like I printed out all the words and like memorized them, and that part like hits me really deep.
This just shows you as a filmmaker, as a director, because I caught it, but I was like, this probably isn't going to mean anything. But when they were driving, Yelena in the backseat, the young one, was singing her hearts off. Mm-hmm. But you could see her dad was wasn't singing as much as he was, but he was mouthing it with her. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Well, it's a
Didn't
great
think it was
song.
going to come back at all. And then it hit you, and then I'm like, oh, this is why
Oh, Marvel loves those moments. We're both upside down now.
Yeah.
The song has to come back. We have said we can do this all day, more times than I can count. Marvel loves this.
They are a callback. Like, bring it back.
and we eat that shit up. We love it.
I love it too. If we had great power, great responsibilities somewhere in the MCU, and Spider-Man said it like whenever he was in frame, I would be like, yay! Like, I don't care. Play me the song, man.
Yeah.
Like, these are the notes I missed. Oh, what a theater experience. Everyone cheered. Everyone yelled.
Yeah, that Marvel logo came on and that theater lost it. And I was like, this is what I miss.
I don't have a whole box office list in front of me because at this point it's irrelevant. They've been number one.
It made
80 million at the box office, another 60 million from Disney
that makes
Plus.
Me so happy because I love the full release.
And internationally, it did well too. It was like 215 worldwide, which is just, we're back. We're in it.
We are back.
This would have been $1 billion movie without the pandemic.
Correct.
And it still might.
It still might. It's not
what Space Jam 2 and Snake Eyes are going to come out.
Neither of those really interest me at all, or move the needle. Escape Room 2.
Oh yeah, Escape Room 2 is going to knock this out for sure.
Yeah, that's
it's
it. It's
the Tournament of Champions, Terrence.
They're
all champions.
I have to see that on Tuesday for work. I have to review it, but I haven't seen the first one, so this week is going to be a lot of me watching the Escape Room.
Oh, Jamie, I'm so sorry.
You should text us while you're watching, because that's
I don't really want to, but I said I would. But actually, I'm kind of excited to write a review for a movie that I like. I'm not going to go in it expecting to hate it, but I'm sure I'm not going to love it. So
it's just preposterously stupid. That's basically what happens. Yeah.
A good muscle to flex.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be amazing. I don't know. Who knows?
Saw for kids. What can go wrong?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all the box office stuff I have. It's Marvel. They're the king. It doesn't matter.
They seem to be doing all right.
This is more interesting when I'm like, well, it's dipping. And what do the audiences want? And the audiences want Marvel.
Yeah, apparently that superhero fatigue thing is just not a thing.
Look, I mean, we said it when COVID happened, but I was like, this might be the best thing that could have happened to the MCU, because we all went from being like, yeah, sure, okay, we're gonna do this, to being like, WandaVision, Loki, give it all to me now.
Now they're just keeping their foot on your neck, like, we are not stopping.
Oh, it's insane. I don't think we've ever had this much in a tube where I'm just like, okay, Next week we're gonna finish Loki, and then,
And
like,
then I get
two
What If.
weeks later Shang-Chi's gonna happen, and then
Yeah.
What If's gonna happen, and then the Eternals is gonna come out,
What
and
a
then
time to
Hawkeye's
be
gonna come out,
alive!
and then Spider-Man's gonna come out.
Yeah. And that's all just this year, which is just nuts.
Miss
Marvel is in there too somewhere.
Yeah,
Like,
Miss
it's
Marvel
crazy.
the other
Oh,
one,
yeah.
And honestly, like I if they keep doing the Disney Plus release, I will keep going to the movie to see it a couple times, and then I will immediately buy it. I loved that on Thursday night I was in the theater watching it, and Friday night I was in my bed watching it. I could get used to that.
You know what's funny? I think this is a business model that, like, I've heard so many families were like, I wasn't ready to go to the theater, or there are 5 of us in my family. It was easier for me to just spend $30 and watch it at the crib than it was to go to the theater. I'm like, that's a genius business model, because here, for these type of movies, it's always somebody's going to always purchase that off of Disney Plus. There's never going to be a point. I don't know if people will buy this. They're going to.
For other movies, it could potentially hurt theaters, but
correct.
I think with Marvel, it's not going to hurt.
It's going to be both. Yeah, you can be
It'll
whatever.
Be fine. That's the show, guys. Black Widow was great. One of the finest prequels we've seen, which, it's only a prequel to half the universe. It's a sequel to the other half. That glass is half full or half empty, however you want to look at it. But you should, of course, leave us a review on iTunes and comment on YouTube. The show, you can follow at Hollywood Already Did It on Twitter and Instagram, or Hollywood ADI. I'm at, as always, Blake. Jamie's at Jamie Cinematics, and Terrence is at Terrence Tatum. Hollywood Already Did It, of course, also has You Can't Do That Anymore, a show about movies that you could not or should not or would not make today. And our Marvel pair-ups, where we take every episode of any Marvel show of WandaVision, Loki, or Falcon and the Winter Soldier and pair it up with movies or TV shows in the genre that it pairs up with, which has Jamie on it every week and currently is in the middle of its Loki show. And Terrence does all of our reactions and everything else on the channel. And Jamie, of course, is on the Phase Zero podcast at comicbook.com and has many articles there. You can go read what she's going to think about Escape Room 2 in just a few days. The suspense is killing me. And we will see everybody next week when it is time to jam.
Later.
That's how the song went. Welcome to the jam. Anyone know?